During a voice call in celebration of her 1 million subscribers, I was having a conversation with rising YouTube star Mindless Me, and I told her of my intention to expose the worst Halloween character. And when she realized who I was talking about, she spoke with tears in her eyes as she begged me not to talk about her hero, her savior, her favorite, Allison Nelson. Halloween The Curse of Michael Myers and Halloween Resurrection have one thing in common. They are the only two movies in the entire series that I do not like. But here's the thing. Despite not liking Curse, I can say that I really enjoy Tommy and Kara. And while most of the other characters in Resurrection are bland, I thought Freddy was funny. He was certainly more memorable than anyone else in that movie besides Laurie, who's barely in it, and Michael himself. The point I'm making here is that even in a story that I don't think is good or well crafted, I can still point to either a character or performance that I thought was decent and probably of a higher quality than the film that it is in. Now, it's no secret that I wasn't a fan of the 2018 trilogy. I can enjoy each film for various reasons, but I think, and I outlined previously, that as a whole, they do not make for a cohesive tale. If I look at them as one-offs that just happen to be directed by the same person, with some characters who appear in each one, they're much better. And I've always been fascinated by how much worship some people seem to give them, especially on Twitter. What is it about these three movies that is so great? I hear about the score. I hear about James Jude Courtney as Michael, who didn't do anything in Ends, but that's besides the point. I hear about Jamie Lee Curtis, who didn't do anything in Kills, but that's besides the point. I hear about the kills themselves. But I never seem to hear much about Allison. And what is Allison's personality? After three movies, I truly cannot tell you anything about this character. And to his credit, David Gordon Goof knows how to make a character that I can at least get a sense of who they are. Karen, for example, is a mother who has a difficult relationship with her own mother, but will still come to her aid if she's in trouble. And Hawkins is an officer who feels regret for not having let Michael die when he could have. In Halloween 2018, Allison is introduced as Laurie's granddaughter, who apparently wants to have a relationship with her but tells her to get over Michael. She dates Cameron, who cheats on her and then stabs Michael when he's trying to escape Laurie's house. Besides a seemingly positive relationship with her grandmother and a romantic relationship with this guy, there's not much to her character. It's important to remember that when 2018 came out, there was a belief that given the fact Allison survived the film, she could maybe be further developed in the sequels. That it was too soon to judge a character who likely was going to get more screen time and by extension more growth as the trilogy progressed. I can now assure you that that did not happen. Halloween Kills opens with her finding out that her dad died, and this, along with the revelation that Michael is still alive, triggers her to want revenge. We have one scene at the hospital, another scene where she's in the car with Lonnie and Cameron, to illustrate her sadness over the loss of her father. And it's a nice start, but it's really surface level, and I wish there was more of it. The same can be said of her relationship with Cameron. They instantly are back on speaking terms after she caught him cheating, with not even a single scene of them making amends. The reason for this is simple. Halloween Kills is a movie that is mostly focused on making Michael look unstoppable, and between the flashbacks, multiple characters, it just doesn't have time to develop Allison. And unlike Laurie, who despite not getting to do much in Kills, still had ample focus in both the original film and the 2018 film, Allison never gets anywhere near the same level of attention in either 2018 or Kills. Both films are more interested in other characters than her, and she kind of just ends up chugging along for the ride in each. Halloween Ends is a movie that I have defended. I have said I like it. I have said it tried to do something different, and in doing something different, it gave us one of the worst romances I've ever seen in any movie and turned Allison from an underdeveloped character into an awful character. The main purpose Allison has in this film is to date Corey Cunningham, the main villain, arguably the main character of the movie. Firstly, why does she have to date a child killer? It would be one thing if she had no idea about it, but the movie tries to purport that they have a connection by virtue of being people with traumatic past or experiences with death. But as Corey points out, she is not blamed at all for what Michael did, whereas he is reviled. This isn't the film being self-aware, but rather noting its own absurdity and expecting us to go along with it. It's mind-boggling to me that Corey, a character who only shows up in the third movie of a trilogy, ends up having more development than Allison, who's been in all three of these. Like, whether you like Corey or not, we're given an explanation as to how he became a pariah, what he does to avoid being with people, etc. Her relationship with Corey is part of a bigger symptom that plagues her character throughout the entire trilogy, which is that she's not really a character. She's a plot device, with her function and ends being to serve as the thing that causes Laurie and Corey to become more antagonistic towards each other. Hardly any mention is paid to her trauma from the loss of both of her parents, with the only real mention of what happened being a direct blaming of Laurie for their demise, which makes no sense. She was also a plot device in 2018, only being there to bring high schoolers into the plot for Michael to take out, and her function in Kills was to serve as a reason for Karen to be lured away from the hospital and killed by Michael, as to further exacerbate the conflict between Laurie and Michael. And the way that Allison treats Laurie is just really disgusting. You have one living family member who has survived two murder sprees, warned everyone for years that the same thing that happened to her could happen again, and now that it has, you blame her for causing the deaths of your parents and friends through her supposed hysteria. This is where she became completely unlikable to me. And the two scenes later on of her saving Laurie from Michael and admitting she was wrong are just too little too late. Enns has a fetish with characters misblaming Laurie for Michael's actions as though she's his puppet master. But in their case, you could at least make the argument that they don't really know her, so it's easier to understand their ignorant comments. Allison knows that Laurie tried to kill Michael right around when her dad was killed, and that Laurie was in a hospital bed when her boyfriend and mother were killed. So, how she's able to construct his actions as her fault is only due to bad writing. It's fascinating to watch a character spend two-thirds of a trilogy with little to no personality, and when you finally give them one, they become an extremely toxic force in your story. Like, we went from Allison the cardboard cutout to Allison the girlfriend of the child killer who hates her grandmother for something the poor lady didn't even do. And there were so many ways to fix this. If they had let Cameron live after seeing his dad get killed by Michael, and established that he and Allison are still together after 4 years, but that he's been going off the deep end from years of being deprived of his dad, it would be much easier to believe her reluctance to accept Laurie's claims about him being a killer, because in this instance, they've been together for 4 years instead of 4 days, like her and Corey in the film proper. It also would have made more sense to continue their relationship because their shared trauma over losing their parents to Michael would have been more believable. We also could have had some scenes of them talking about their parents, which would have made Allison more sympathetic than she is in the actual movie. Part of me almost wishes she hadn't even been in Enns, that they had her moved to another city. That way she would still be underdeveloped, but definitely not unlikable. The point of this character was never to serve as a successor to Laurie. Her function was to be the one relative that Laurie has left who will either abandon her or mistreat her for the sake of advancing the plot so that more interesting characters can take center stage. She's basically John Tate from H2O, but instead of it being Laurie's teenage son, it's her adult granddaughter acting like a teenager, and it making even less sense because of what she has personally experienced so far in the story. And just as John disappears from the story as we get to that movie's climax, Allison, who some fans had hoped would take the reins from her grandmother and be the one to defeat Michael, only comes into the final battle after her grandmother has already defeated both Michael and his goofy protege. There's no final confrontation between Allison and Corey after the former learns the truth about him. We get a scene of her admitting he was bad, and that's it. This is why I said she's not a character. Everything she does in that movie is to either service Laurie or Corey. She matters so little that despite surviving the whole film, she has minimal involvement in the climax besides blaming her grandmother for shooting Corey, even though she only did after he tried to kill her, and attacking Michael after he's already been defeated by Laurie. Now, I was scrolling through one of Mindless Me's videos when I saw a user claim that John Strode was the worst Halloween character, and the difference between John and Allison is that we're not supposed to root for John. We aren't supposed to see him slap his daughter and cheer, or smile when he screams at his wife for rightfully being worried about Michael. He's a hate sink that we don't feel anything for when he gets his comeuppance. Allison is supposed to be someone that we want to see survive and make it out of this conflict, but I just can't bring myself to do that. She goes from a flat character to an extremely unlikable one who treats Laurie very badly, ignores the warning signs of Corey's instability, and gets away with no repercussions besides saying I'm sorry. If either Corey or Michael had slit Allison's throat before having their final encounter with Laurie, I would have cheered. I've never seen a character in 3 films, which is not an easy feat for a horror protagonist, who goes from having no personality to acting like a kid despite being an adult, who's nasty toward their only living relative that saved their life, but empathetic to a child killer. The failure of that trilogy and this character has nothing to do with the acting talents of Andi Matichak. She did the best she could with the slop she was given, and I sincerely hope that she gets some other better role to wash away the filth of this 3-movie mistake that she was in. I don't care about how good the music was, or how high the body count was, or how pretty the precious mask looked, or how much money each film made less and less of. If you can't even make one of your lead characters likable, and not a complete horny idiot like Allison, you have a bad story. They literally gave Corey more development in 1 movie than they gave Allison in 3. She is everything wrong with that trilogy as something they set up in the first movie that a lot of people thought was going to have some big impact on the story, just for it to really not amount to anything or mean very little.